We're rolling. Back again. Welcome. Everyone at home, we are back for another episode of Uncut and Unfiltered. Today, as you can say, we are not at home. We are actually being welcomed here in Derbyshire by the wonderful guys at White Peak, joined today by Max, one of the founders. Max, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
You're very welcome. And thank you for coming up to visit and inviting us to have a chat about all things whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to getting stuck in. Guys, as ever, we've also got Stevie on the mics here. We all good? Sounding good, Stevie?
Yeah, we're good. We're good
clean?
to go. I'm looking forward.
Lovely.
Because you've tried.
I've only tried one expression, and it was a minute ago. So
I haven't
you know
tried
what?
anything. So
obviously, we've had Dave giving us a tour of the distillery. Which, guys, if you're at home and you want to sort of look at some more clean-cut content, you don't want to listen to us chat and shite about whiskies. You want to actually get involved in the distilleries. Head over to the Whiskey Baron channel. You can have a little look at the White Peak tour now. But what we're going to do is we're going to get stuck in, learn a little bit more from yourself, Max, for everyone at home about the brand. Try some of these delicious whiskies. So where are we going to start? We start with the core range or the core expression, as it were?
Yeah, let's do that. I think that's our most recent release. Everything that's gone before were very limited edition bottlings that by and large have sold out pretty quickly. So what we try to do in the last sort of 3 months or so is build on some of those earlier releases and have something that we now can have as a core expression that our followers and pubs, bars and restaurants can rely upon being there in months to come. So it's called Cadoro.
Cadoro, what does that mean?
So that is, we've kind of stolen that brand, dare I say, from the Wireworks. So one of the cable products that they used to make and that they exported very successfully decades ago was a product that they called Cadoro. And so when we looked into the history of what went on here before, we found this cable brand and we just thought it kind of sounds nice.
It kind of sounds like a type of sherry or something.
Yeah.
So it very much fits into the...
Yeah,
all
definitely.
right, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound very kind of Derbyshire-like, but it's, just felt like a nice word on the tongue, but also has this, deep connection to where we are.
Right. For sure. Okay, so Cadoro, tell us a little bit about I know that obviously all of your whiskies are non-age statement, which is very, very cool. Not focusing on that, focusing on the flavor, focusing on the branding. Love it. Tell us a little bit about the maturation for this one, though. What sort of casks are going into it? What ABV are we at, Stevie?
46.8.
46.8. Okay. I like it off the dome.
Yeah.
I love it. Very good. All right. 46.8. So why 46.8?
So, we have a small team. So Dave, who you've met today, myself, a guy called Tom Lindsay, who is our kind of brand ambassador. And typically between us, we are making the decisions on releases, and we're making the decisions on what we think any release works kind of best at or puts its best foot forward at in terms of ABV. Okay. So that's the kind of the general process. I hate round numbers.
Okay.
So, 47 would have been fine for most people, but, for me, I like something with a decimal in it. So, yeah.
Cool. Hey, good enough for me.
We have a view that, look, we think this is, it kind of presents itself well at somewhere in the kind of 46 to 48 region, and then we try and nail that down a little bit more accurately. Mm-hmm. And then finally, what goes on the label is something close to that decision.
Cool. It's delicious.
So really working with the spirit as you go along, right?
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's... I mean, look, we're still on a huge learning curve here because we haven't been going that long. So we're still learning about our spirit. We're learning about how it behaves in different casks and how that behaviour changes over time. And so, by definition, you can be sampling different casks from one year to the next, and you may just have a kind of different view about what strength you want to bottle things at, depending on when you decide to do the bottling.
Right. You don't want to be tied to anything as well. Like you say, if they're from one batch to another, you want that little bit of variation because these casks need that slightly higher, slightly lower strength
Yeah.
you have that flexibility.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for us, what we've tended to find with our spirit is we find it really approachable at, let's just say, that the higher strengths, and typical of most craft distilleries. We're not chill filtering. There's no added colour, but because that chill filtering, that not having that chill filtering means that we have to just think about sort of minimum ABVs that kind of offset the fact that we're not going through this chill filtering process.
Right.
And the general rule of thumb is if you bottle above 46%, then you're not going to get any of that kind of protein build-up that chill filtering is supposed to kind of guard against.
For sure. Very interesting.
Natural colour.
Natural colour. And you said something really interesting there, Stevie. You said working with the whiskey, and I was just sipping on this and saying, as you said that, this is fucking delicious. And you couldn't have said it better. You are clearly working with this whiskey, because 46.8, I actually wouldn't say is particularly a high strength. Obviously, like you, we work in the industry. We're constantly being given 50, 60+% drams. And so for most people, this is hard-hitting whiskey. For us, it's actually a little bit more easygoing, right?
It's not thin.
It sits, no.
You know what I mean?
Stevie will judge a whiskey, venomously. Honestly, he will go after whiskeys when they're watered down too much. And it is. Often, whiskeys are watered down purely for the purpose of let's get more bottles on the shelves, right?
Yeah.
Let's crank up the volume of bottles. Let's make sure that we're really cashing in. And ultimately, it does. It comes out thin. It comes out watery. It comes out frustratingly disappointing.
Yeah.
I've been sport, Max, in the industry. I didn't work in whiskey beforehand. And coming straight into the Whiskey Baron, it was 50, 60 plus all the time.
Yeah.
So when you have a 40% or 42, 43, you can really taste that, thinness in it, right?
I think as well, Stevie came in with me, and I'm quite a harsh judge of character with everything, but particularly with whiskey. So, I would be like, yeah, no, this is shit. And you go, okay, maybe it is shit. Maybe I need to level up. And so now this is the thing. We're trying all these different whiskeys. It is rare that you find something below 50% that is this good.
Bullshit.
Thank you.
For 46.
This is sensational. This is really well-rounded. Is there virgin oak in this maturation?
So not in this particular one.
I get this corn element, which again, normally I hate. It comes from bourbon. I normally don't look for that.
Yeah.
It's beautifully integrated.
Yeah. So this is it's a vatting of our two core cask styles, being ex-bourbon and STR. And within the STR, we've got a variety. We've probably got a range of 6. So those are casks that have been reconditioned. We've had a conversation with the cooperage out in Porto about toasting levels, char levels, even types of oak. Cool. But what this is a vatting of roughly 25% ex-bourbon and 75% STR.
Okay. Sorry, 25% bourbon, 75% STR.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
That's sensational. I really like it. Very, very fruity. And this is the thing. We were being brought around by David, and he was sort of, telling us the aim of the character, these long fermentation times, your cut points. It's all focused around getting, I hate using the word smooth, but a fruity, enjoyable, light, but it still has a good amount of depth to it, sort of thing, He describes it much better, guys. You need to come down to the distillery. Dave will tell you about how they make the whiskey and why they make it that way. That was terribly put. But it is kind of exactly what it says on the tin. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, no, I think certainly we wanted to create a whiskey that was approachable. And we wanted all those kind of fruit-forward notes that you get from the long maturation, from the live yeast that we're using, also to some extent from the way we run our stills. And part of this back in the day was, look, we want to create really good whiskey, but we haven't got deep enough pockets not to put any out there for 10 years. So we need to think about a style of whiskey and a sort of a way of making the whiskey that's going to come to fruition relatively young.
Right.
Because it's just an economic necessity.
Definitely.
And the economics don't direct how we make whiskey, but it was just the reality of starting a business.
Of course. Hey, look, at the end of the day, it is a business, right?
Yeah.
You need to look at the money.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's all very well and good making all this whiskey, but if you're going to go out of business before you can sell it, what's the fucking point, right? Definitely.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Definitely.
And, we're building a great team of people here, so we're providing employment, and, hopefully we're building something for the long term. Yeah, and it's super important we don't run out of cash. So every now and again we need to sell some whiskey.
Cool. I like it. What do you reckon of this, Stevie? What are you getting?
I really like it. I can taste the youthfulness on it, but I don't dislike that. You know how sometimes you do?
Right.
Don't dislike it, but I'm getting a lot of creamy pears with a little bit of white pepper on the end.
Getting melons, getting a lot of peppery wryness to it as well.
But as you say, very approachable, but also, as I said, very bolshy. Like, if you gave this to me blind, and I'm not great at tasting things blind, but I'd think this is up in the early 50s,
Right. Yeah. No, it sits really nicely at the strength. And this is still peated.
Yeah, so this is lightly peated. So
10 ppm.
Everything that we've released to date was a lightly peated spirit that we made in the first place.
Yeah.
It's up around 8 to 10 ppm in the malt. But by the time we've distilled the spirit,
nominal,
we're down about 4 ppm.
I was going to say, it's in this. It doesn't stand out to me. I think it's maybe adding some very sort of subtle characteristics.
Yeah,
and sort
definitely.
of giving that depth.
soft smokiness.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't stand out. And again, it's something that we said to Dave on the tour. People think of peaty whiskies, and they certainly don't think of something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the wonderful thing about peat is there are different levels.
Yeah.
Now you look at Islay, lots of the distilleries over there. It kind of gets to a point where peat is like white noise. After a point, you can't taste it. There's no fucking difference. Do you know what I mean? It can be 50 ppm or 100 ppm or 500 ppm. I don't think that our taste buds can really pick up those discernible differences. But when you come down here, like you say, distillation at 8 to 10, coming out in the bottle, probably around the sort of 3-4 marker, it's light, it's interesting, it adds that different dynamic. But for somebody who's new to whiskey or somebody who doesn't like peat, very, very approachable.
Yeah.
Which is what we want more of, or what I want more of in the whiskey space. Don't get me wrong. There's always place for an Ardbeg on my shelf, right?
Yeah.
But I want to be able to, Joe Bloggs comes over and he doesn't like peat. I want to be able to give him something that will push him in that direction, start him down that pathway and that journey of exploration, right?
And it was almost a kind of a personal thing for Claire and I. We like a whole range of whiskies, but kind of we've always enjoyed lightly peated whiskey over the years. And when we were thinking about what is it about this whiskey we're making in Derbyshire that's going to be different, at the time, and I believe it's still the case today, there was no one else in this emerging English category making a lightly peated single malt. So we thought, well, that's interesting. That's a flavour style that we like. But yeah, exactly to speak to your point, we wanted to appeal to a kind of broad church. So we thought about the peat in terms of adding some background complexity, some sort of interesting flavours, but really not dominating and sometimes we have to go through this conversation with people. Once they hear the word peat in the two words lightly peated, they're kind of imagining Lafroig or something like that, and we have to say no, it's we're not putting ourselves out there as making a peated whiskey. We're putting ourselves out there as making some great flavour in our whiskey, and part of that kind of context is the lightly peated kind of mash bill that we're using. It's
a component, but it's not the only component. It's not the showstopper. It's just a nice part of the whole recipe, right?
Yeah, and that was very much kind of our approach to it. So all about flavour, about background complexity.
Love it. Stevie, I've thoroughly enjoyed that first dram, and it's got me thirsty for a second. Can you pour, please, sir?
What are we going on to here, Max?
So I think now we're going to hop to something that
I'm looking forward to.
We're kind of coming towards the end of this batch. This is a virgin oak finish.
Okay. So this one has been in virgin oak.
Yeah, and this is stronger. So this is 51.7% ABV.
Okay.
Just over 3,059 bottles, something like that. Spent most of its maturation in ex-bourbon, and then just between 8 and 9 months in virgin oak. and actually a slight variety of virgin oak. So we get our virgin oak casks. It's American oak, so they come from a cooperage over in Kentucky. And yeah, we're specifying sort of some variation around toasting levels, around char levels, and there's a bit of that variation in here.
I think one important factor to mention now is this is English whiskey, everyone, as well. We talk a lot about Scotch, you know, naturally because that's what we work with most, but...
And out of interest, Max, you were saying you grew up around here.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that why? Because one of my questions is why English whiskey? I get it's a big emerging category, but why not Scotch or why not Irish? Or is it just a case you've grown up here? Is there something else that ties you to this place? Or was it a case of you found this location and it's kind of like a no-brainer because it's got everything you need?
Yeah, so it's the plan was always to build the distillery in Derbyshire in the Peak District.
Okay.
And that's because that's where Claire and I are from, and it was kind of a selfish decision. We'd moved away for a few years. We moved back here in 2010. We decided to set this business up over a kind of long period of time, but kind of we wanted it to be relatively close to home. Whiskey had never been made in Derbyshire before. It's a county and an area we love, and we just thought, well, yeah, let's build our business here. And yeah, we certainly never had any aspirations to build a Scotch whiskey distillery. You know, there's lots of people who are very good at that and been doing it for 400 or 500 years. Yeah. So, you know, let's do something different.
That's what I love about having spoken with you, having spoken with your wife and, you know, the other founder here, Claire, and having spoken with your team as well as
Claire
we're touring
is his
around.
wife.
Sorry?
Claire is his wife.
That's what I just said, having spoken with your wife, Claire.
You said, sorry, there is a third founder?
No, wife
right.
and founder.
Okay.
Sorry, I was going to say and co-founder. And she doesn't like being called co-founder, so apologies.
No worries.
Sorry, speaking with the team at large here, generally, is very focused on doing something different. You know, you didn't get, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there was talk, I know, of certain people, certain, third-party sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Certain people coming down to give you advice, to give you sort of a leading hand, people that have been involved in other distilleries, whether they be distillery managers or engineers or whatever it may be, but you didn't want to get input from people that were ultimately involved in so many different Scotch distilleries, because then, like you say, you just have a Scotch distillery down in England,
it would influence
right?
you too much.
It would be the same sort of style. So that's what I love about you, and from you probably won't big yourself up enough, but speaking with your wife, Claire, she was saying very much, you know, the focus was on flavour first, you know, and I know you were saying there when we were interviewing you on the whiskey brand thing at the end about the brands. It was like the brands were kind of a secondary thing. It's now we've got to start selling stuff. We better create a brand. It was always focused on the quality, on the product. And I love that because I think there are so many people, particularly now in the boom that we are seeing in whiskey as a whole, where it's, right, let's just rush. Let's just get a whiskey distillery up and built. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it tastes like. Just fucking get it in there. It doesn't matter what just label it up. Yeah, it doesn't matter about the strength. 46, get as many of them out, right? 3-year-old whiskey, just out the door. Doesn't matter what it tastes like. And that bothers me. Now, one thing that I would say that's really interesting here is maximum age of 5, right? You started distilling in 2018?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're kind of, operationally, we're 5 years in.
So 5 years old is the max that's going to be in any of these bottles. Some people may sort of look at that and be, oh, it's not old enough. Why is it not 10? I'm going to wait for The beautiful thing about this is it works at a young age. Now, so many distilleries out there, and I would say it very honestly, as Stevie knows on the podcast, when I don't like something, it just doesn't work. Wait for that sweet spot. It might be at 8 years, it might be at 10 years, it might be at 15 or 20 years. But I think what you've managed to do here is exactly what you set out to do. Create a product that is delicious in the short term, but also has a huge amount of potential for the longer term. And that's the beauty of it. You're still only 5 years in the game. You guys are babies in the whole grand scheme of the whiskey world, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You've got so much room to grow and to start, developing new products. And if this is the base, woo, I'm excited to see what's to come. Do you know what I mean? Honestly, it's really, really, really cool. Very impressive. And again, that focus on quality, that focus on let's make something that's right for the people, not let's just make a load of money.
And I think, look, going back a few steps, got lots of generous advice, and there's lots of very generous people in the whiskey sector because, it's a difficult business to start, and I think everyone in the industry, certainly amongst those kind of founder-led brands, you kind of understand that, very, very well. But I got lots of generous advice from lots of people in the early days, and you've got to filter it for what makes sense for you. And I was kind of almost like super nervous about sort of getting too much influence, let's just say from north of the border. And I love Scotch, and that's the whole reason I'm sat here today, because, I've been drinking Scotch for 30 years.
Right.
But I was very conscious that there was a danger we could build a distillery that made Scotch whisky in England, and that would be a crazy thing to do because they're really good at that in Scotland. Yeah. And also, it would be a huge opportunity lost. I mean, I'm only going to be starting one distillery in my lifetime. So let's
you sure? This is really good. I don't know. You might be onto something here, to be honest with you, Max. I don't know. I won't tell Claire that on the way out, but you have the potential here maybe to set up something else.
I can tell you, I've got sort of a lifetime's energy that's gone into this business. So yeah, it's just, do something interesting that you feel passionate about. The same with our style of whiskey. We make whiskey that we enjoy drinking. Right. And hopefully other people will as well. But the opposite end of the spectrum would be to make something that lots of the people enjoy that we don't particularly enjoy. Yeah. And who wants to do that?
No, it's crazy. Worst comes to worst, you've got a couple of drams at your hands,
well,
right?
That's I walk through our dunnage, every day, and I just think, if it all goes tits up, I'm not running out of whiskey.
Yeah, you're right, mate.
You've got a few barrels to drown your sorrows there, I'd say. Absolutely.
What do you think of this, the Virgin Oak, mate?
I like it. You know me. I'm not a bourbon fan. Yeah. I'm not a massive fan on Virgin Oak. I think it's a lot better balanced than most. It's not the sort of dram that I would rush towards. But that being said, for a Virgin Oak finish, I think it's really actually quite nice.
And where are we at with this? Is it another full...
51.7.
51.7.
51.7, yeah.
Yeah, no, and again, very well integrated. The alcohol standpoint is sensational. The balance of flavors is good. It's just not all of these flavors are ones that I look for.
Yeah, and the Virgin Oak, for us, again, I've used the phrase, but we are still on this voyage of discovery. And it's a case of, if you don't try certain things in the early years, you're unlikely to kind of ever try them. Yes. And understanding how our sort of spirit behaves, which I spoke about before. Less so with the Virgin Oak, but the second release we did last year, which was called Oversmoke, and it sold out in a weekend. That was just a very, very small batch. I think it was 997 bottles, essentially 3 casks. But it was a certain type of STR cask that had what the translation from Portuguese into English is literally oversmoke. So when they were refurbishing it in the cooperage, it had this kind of oversmoke treatment. And that cask style, about a year after we first started filling them, I just did not get on with it. Right. So the next time we ordered some more STR casks, I didn't order any of these oversmoke casks. And then we went back to it another year later, so then you're 2 years in, and I absolutely loved it. So then you're thinking,
rush back to the Coopers.
We should have bought more of that. So now, since then, we've been filling more Oversmoke. But it's just the point is that, from 1 year to the next, from year 5 to 6, 4 to 5, 3 to 4, whatever it is, things are going to change.
It's fascinating. And this is the thing. People at home don't appreciate this. We only have a very small glimpse of it. Obviously, we deal with all different sorts of spirits from all different distilleries. We do our own re-racking projects. And it's fascinating. You learn a huge amount. But for you guys, any distillery owner, manager, having that one spirit that they're constantly working with, like you say, it's so important to get to grips with your spirit, with how that's going to interact and behave with different woods, different finishes, in different areas of the warehouse. Actually, this is something that we haven't mentioned on the podcast. Dave very kindly showing us around the different areas that you've got storage. Yeah. And what's fascinating there is you've actually currently got kind of 3 different microclimates almost within your distillery. Yeah. The cooler downstairs, which is much more consistent temperature year through, whereas you've got the upstairs he was saying in the summer really sort of picks up quite a lot of heat.
Yeah.
And so that's where you're going to be looking to put your finishing casks, bulge up that flavor, and really sort of, hammer in whether it's the STR, the virgin oak, whatever it is, finishes over those summer periods to get the most out of the cask.
Yeah, no, and we've got
fascinating.
We've got data loggers that have been logging the temperature in those 3 different areas,
Bringing it to a whole new level. I love that.
It is fascinating. And we can't change the microclimate that we've got here. I mean, I guess we're all contributing to it, but actually, it is really interesting within the building itself how things change across the seasons.
Yeah.
And it has a significant difference when we're making the whiskey. When you're distilling and when you're fermenting, and then also the maturation.
The whole thing is crazy. I love the fact though that you're actually, Dave didn't mention that, you're tracking the temperature at different times of the year in different locations. So this is the thing, the level of detail, the level of analysis that's going in. And it's clear when you taste the dram, but most people won't appreciate that that's the forethought that's gone into it. It's actually
there's
really
so much that
fucking
affects,
cool.
So
really,
much
really
that affects
cool.
a barrel whiskey, and the fact that you have been logging that pretty much since the start is a very smart move, because as you say, you may distill something at this time of year, put it in a barrel, then wonder why it changes. The fact that you're logging it now, you can maybe go, this worked really well. Where was the temperature at? What time of year?
Yep.
Can we recreate this? Probably. And,
Guess how many Scotch distilleries are doing that?
None.
And you know what? It's because they all started in a different time, right? You look at the we were saying actually as well, the tech that you guys have got here. The Scottish computers, they've got their logbooks that they write in and whatever. The mills even. You guys have got a mill that I've noticed. Was it CTS process?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that brand. It's all Porteous or Bobby.
Yeah.
Now, there's something very romantic for me about seeing a Porteous or a Bobby mill. But when I came in here today, it's like, shit, these guys are leveling up, right? This is new age. This is like, this is what's happening next. Because don't get me wrong, the Porteous, the Bobby mills, they were made so well that they didn't need replacing, right?
Yeah.
But this is like 100 years in the making now. These things are going to start going out sooner rather than later, probably.
Yeah.
Brands are going to have to move over.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. Once those distilleries, particularly, as we say, Scotch distilleries, the place where it kind of really has grown whiskey,
it will change
the global phenomenon that it
big
is.
Time.
Exactly. These distilleries will have to get used to their changes. Whereas you guys, you're already in it. You're ready for the sort of the new era. But also, as we say, gathering that information so that when you do hit the 10-year-old marker, the 15, the 20-year-old marker, all of a sudden you've got so much more data to work off of, and you're going to really be able to manipulate. I'm excited for you. Fucking hell. I'm sat here like, I want to get involved. This is really, really cool. I love it.
We did some of those things. We're just curious. We're kind of curious people. So,
for sure.
When we built the distillery, I was here every single day. And we worked with an engineering firm, but none of them had run a distillery before. So they had their particular perspective. We hired our head distiller a year before we switched the stills on.
Right.
But he and me and the engineering firm were, discussing things every day in terms of just the minutiae of decisions.
For sure.
And it's hard to kind of unpack where our flavour comes from because there's so many things that contribute to it. But it was all of those decisions that were taken in the early days.
For sure.
Things like, we never have this conversation with people, but our fermenters are insulated. So we're not dynamically controlling the temperature, and there are some people doing that. But most of the time, fermentations, you just let them run. What we were concerned about was the rate of change in temperature in the fermentation. Not that it might get to point A or point B, but how quickly it would get there and then drop back.
Right. Okay.
So our washbacks are insulated, and that was just a decision at the time we thought made some sense.
Right.
And it's hard to say in our 6 or 7 day fermentation, how much contribution that kind of insulated tank is playing. For sure. But it's having a bearing.
Yeah, definitely.
On what we're doing.
Yeah. I have to say as well, the other thing that made me laugh, Dave was saying, I was looking at the stills, looking at the line arms, and he was saying it was the week that they were being installed that you thought, let's just extend those line arms by a meter or so, shall we? Again, just that, ultimately very last minute decision, but all focused on the end product, all focused on what is going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of any kind of founder-led business. You can make those decisions. It's like we're a committee of two really. It's Claire and I, but she leaves the engineering kind of geekiest stuff to me. So it's a committee of one. So I have a conversation with myself, and then you kind of decide that's what we're going to do.
Cool. Yeah. I love it. Very good.
So Max, are you purely going on your engineering background, or did you do a lot of research on distilleries, stills, washbacks in the sort of lead up to opening?
Yeah. So I've got a background in engineering, which means I can have a conversation with engineers, and at least I understand some of the vocabulary, not necessarily some of the the real science and detail. And then there's lots of things about distilling whiskey that you can read about, and that's what I did. And then there's lots of great people out there with amazing experience that you can have conversations with. So again, that's what I did. We spoke earlier about my kind of caution about potentially building a distillery that made Scotch whisky in England. So I sort of decided to look in almost like the opposite direction, or I was looking west, and I was looking at the craft distilling scene in the States.
Right.
And at the time, and this is back in sort of 2015 when we finally decided to push the button. I kept reading about this guy called Chip Tate, who started Balcones Distillery. Chip no longer owns Balcones, but that's a whole another story. But I kept reading about this guy Chip. He just was mentioned, left, right, and centre in any article about craft distilling in the States. So I kind of reached out to him on LinkedIn, and for some reason he accepted my invite because I didn't have any background in distilling whiskey. So it's kind of like one of these swipe right moments. Well, who's this guy? Forget it. But I said, look, I'm thinking about building this distillery in Derbyshire in England. I've read a lot about you. I'd love to come out and just kind of, soak up what I can from you.
Right.
Kind of sponge-like. And he said, sure. He said, look, I'm building my second distillery because he'd already parted company with Balcones. So I went out there. He very generously, literally cancelled my hotel before I was arriving. He said, look, come and stay with us. And I spent 4 or 5 days with Chip. And we had lots of discussions around the kind of things that he was really geeky about. So he'd learnt to weld. So if you want a discussion about still design, there's probably no better guy to talk to you about not only how to make the still, but what influence it has on whiskey making and on the spirit you're going to end up with. Amazing. So our stills are hand built in Scotland to our design, but that was all on the back of lots of conversations I was having with various people, reading books, but also talking to Chip.
Awesome.
Really cool. Very, very cool.
Another engineer by the sounds of it as well.
Yeah. I mean,
So Chip, really, it is a distillery built on science, really, in a way.
Yeah, and I think you kind of
a bit of
passion.
love.
Yeah. It's a sort of we try and use the word considered, but this area of the UK, of Derbyshire, has this huge heritage of engineering and innovation. But what is engineering? It's just about making decisions on detailed points, and that's the kind of approach that we had when building the distillery. Because what you build, it does have a bearing on the style of whiskey you're going to make, and the beauty for us was being involved in that process. No one else made those decisions; we made them.
For sure.
Very cool.
I love it. I'm enjoying this. I'm sorry. I am having the best time. Pour me another dram, Stevie. What do we got next?
So the next one, the one that's cautiously unlabeled.
Oh, is this an up and comer?
Yeah. So this is.
You might have to rinse your.
I can rinse away. No worries.
This is a pending release. So this one we've called Alter Ego. So kind of different personality, but essentially what we've done here is we spent a period of time using different cut points with our spirits. So we were just interested to see if we could, even though we've got a lightly peated mash bill, could we somehow, relatively speaking, just elevate a little bit more of that peat and also kind of dial in some of the different kind of fruit notes. So that's a period we went through of about probably 6 or 7 months in total in 2019.
And this is
this is a result. And the other thing that is kind of noteworthy in terms of our releases, and certainly compared to Cadoro, which we started with, this is again a vatting of bourbon and STR, but this is 60% bourbon. So we've kind of turned on its head.
Fuck, that's delicious.
And we're super excited about this.
This is really, I can see why. That's amazing. Where are we at strength-wise on this?
So this is 51.5% ABV.
That's in the bottle,
Yeah.
and what it will come out and be
Yeah,
released
so
at?
that's going to be the bottle strength. And that's what we're trying,
Delicious.
Sits really nicely, doesn't it?
Sits really, really well.
And when are you hoping to release this?
So this is going to be like a mid-June 2023. So
cool. So I tell you what, by the time this is launched, guys, this will be live. We may even drop a little link in the thing below if we can get a link from you. That would be amazing.
We can definitely do that.
And how many bottles are you looking at?
This will be round about 5,000 bottles.
Okay.
So again, we're thinking about this in terms of a potential addition to our kind of stable of core releases.
Please.
And has it been? It's out the cask now, is it, or is it still maturing?
No, so it's been vatted.
It's been vatted.
It's been vatted, yeah. So
didn't know if it went back
in. It's in our vatting tank. That happened about 2 weeks ago. We do everything really last minute here. No, that's not true. There's just so much to do, and also when your whiskey is relatively young, if you can leave it in the cask, for another spring.
Every
period,
week counts, right?
It all contributes. So it's been vatted, but we're now slow proofing, which is something that, just again, one of the elements that we're really kind of fixed on is just taking some time to proof it down to whatever we decide as a team is going to be the bottle strength.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sort of extra percentage of bourbon has really toned down that kind of spice that you got on the first one.
Yeah, I agree. There are more tannins and spice in the first one, but it is a little bit dialed down because of the percentage.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what I love about this is, it's sweeter, it's kind of a little bit juicier, but it's dialed up, and there's a little bit more peppercorn, or not more peppercorn, but it's more pronounced to the back end because the alcohol drives it through. This is my favorite by far. This is sensational.
Me too.
This is really...
Do you know what you're retailing this at?
Yeah, so we'll be retailing that at £65 a bottle.
Fuck. All right, that's a bit good.
Good. Fantastic.
Very good.
Yeah, we're super excited about this. We had an event I was showing you earlier out in the woods at the weekend, and Dave, who you've met, our distillery manager, I was sat out there with a couple of my pals, and he brought me over that bottle and said, Max, that's a mini vatting. So the main vatting is still taking place.
Cool.
This is a mini vatting where we've basically proofed it down for that 70 centilitre bottle, essentially.
And what better way to test it on 9-year-old people?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I was like, shit, I could drink this all night. But then Sunday's going to be a write-off.
Absolutely.
For everyone listening and who maybe isn't watching, obviously hasn't watched the video beforehand of the tour here, the scenery around here is absolutely stunning.
Stunning.
We're right next to a river. What's the river called again?
The river's called the River Derwent.
River Derwent. You've got a private forest here. You're in how many square feet of warehousing here?
Yeah, well, so we've got 30,000 square feet, but we're on a 25-acre site.
Massive, yeah. It's very industrial, very cool. Really nice
I wouldn't say it's industrial. I know what you mean, and obviously it used to be a wireworks. It is definitely industrial.
So industrial.
But it's not. It's got a
and I like
it's
that.
got a really homely feel to it for me. I don't know if it's the age of the building. When you say industrial in a whiskey sense,
I'm talking in an architectural sense.
No, I know, but this is
Not
the
a
thing.
whiskey
For
sense.
me, I'm thinking of like tin dunnage warehouses and that sort of thing. Oh, sorry, tin racked warehouses even. This is dunnage. This is brick.
I mean.
But you know what I mean?
Old school industrial.
It is. It's like stepping into the past almost.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing about that is you're making whiskey of the future. You're making
Yeah,
whiskey
yeah.
in a really new age way. You're
Yeah.
doing all this cool new stuff. But I feel like this is where whiskey should be made.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's
you can,
perfect
you
for
can,
the set
You
and
can
setting.
not only see, but you can feel the history of where we are and
Definitely.
what's
Yeah.
around. So,
And that was how Claire and I felt when we first came down here, is this is where whiskey should be made. And kind of, then it was just like obvious. Yeah, of course we're going to spend a year salvaging the buildings because we've got to do that.
I think it was Claire I asked, was this a distillery beforehand? Because it looks like it could, it's a very old building. So,
and this area of Derbyshire, it has that. It's the industrial heritage essentially. And we're in a UNESCO World Heritage Site here.
Right, yeah.
It has that designation because of the cotton mills, and they started in the 18th century. But yeah, where we are, the west bank of the River Derwent from Cromford down to the city of Derby, it's about 16 miles, something like that, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's because of all of those kind of the kind of fathers of the factory system that built their cotton mills down there.
For sure.
and the other thing as well is you keep a lot of local ties. You involve the local. You're working with the brewery. You're working with local steel people who fabricate the steel.
Yeah.
Like everything is locally resourced.
No, you were talking about the malt mill earlier. I mean, it so happens that CTS, they're an English-based company,
right.
But they were introduced to us by the engineering firm that we used, who were based in South Derbyshire. All of our stainless steel, so the mash tun, the washbacks, the hot liquor tanks, they were all fabricated in Derbyshire.
Right.
So we've tried where we can to source things locally from a capital point of view. And yeah, from a whiskey making point of view, we partner with I can use them because they're kind of happy for us to do so, with a brewery called Thornbridge Brewery in Bakewell, so just 15 miles up the road from here. They make some amazing beers.
Yeah.
I mean, my favourite beer is an IPA that they make, which is called Jaipur, and the yeast that they use for making Jaipur is the yeast that they crop for us every week, and we pitch it into our fermentation.
I love that. See, this is the thing about you, Max. You could tell the passion. Not only are you making a whiskey the way but you've sourced the yeast from your favorite beer. Like, you don't get any more passion than that, do you? Every fucking element is just so carefully considered, well thought out, and it works so well. And this is the thing. Those few differentiators, as we were saying earlier, I think, ultimately whiskey, it's hundreds of years old, right? And by and large, it's been made in a very similar way for so long. But it's those few key differentiators, those few small things that you can do that set you apart, whether it is having special yeast from a local brewery that no one else is going to have, or whether it's really focusing on the bottling strength or the casks that go into it, whatever it may be. When you speak with somebody like yourself, and don't get me wrong, there are big distilleries, Scotland obviously, but the world over, and they're owned by conglomerates, and they do some really cool stuff, and it's delicious whiskey. Fine. Space for that all day long. But for something like this, where you can meet somebody like yourself, and this is the thing, guys, if you're at home, you come down to the distillery here, you don't get brought around by, some random Joe Block, you get brought around by the distillery manager, Dave, or by one of the people who are actually making the whiskey. Obviously, Max, you're on site, as well as your wife, and the other founder, Claire. Have I said that right that time? Yeah. Just so it's clear, two founders.
Yeah.
No, you're still not
Max
saying it right. Is he?
Open bracket, close bracket.
I don't know how to say it. Max and Claire are the founders. They're also married. Claire isn't here. But you will meet everybody that is involved in this whiskey. And that's what's so special about this to me, this whole experience. Like I say, I think I tried one of your whiskeys once before. It was nice, but it didn't stand out to me as now I'm here, I've got such a feel for this. Everything from the design of your bottles, which has been so carefully thought out, to the fact that I can feel the passion and, like I say, speaking with the whole team that goes into this. It's such an incredible brand. It really, really is. And I think that, exactly like you say, it's meant to be here. It feels like we are very much at the home of White Peak Distillery.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this.
It feels like it's been here.
And how weird is that? Because you
Yeah.
go to play, we were lucky enough recently, we went to Springbank, which, as Scotch whisky distilleries goes, is probably one of the biggest, most exciting names. And you go around there and it's been there for absolute years, right? And you get that feeling. how weird is it that we're getting exactly the same feeling here? You're only 5 years old.
Yeah. No, and we
it's
get
something that's really special about that, Max. That's not common.
And we get visitors, every week. We do tours every week, and we get visitors come in, and they just think, yeah, this has always been here. But actually, it's not always been here. The Wireworks has always been here. We're a relatively new occupant.
For sure.
But yeah, I think all of those all of those decisions that contribute to making whiskey are things that we've kind of come about ourselves and just made sure we were involved with. So nothing's an accident, really.
For sure.
There's some things which you can't science everything to death, and that's one of the beauties about making whiskey. There are some things you just cannot kind of quantify or
control.
Kind of understand.
No, but it's like the age-old saying, Max. It's like the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? And the fact that you are putting so much thought, consideration into every element. Again, guys, measuring the temperature at different points in the warehouse throughout the year so that you have that data. Like, nobody fucking does that. That is why, you say, some things just happen. Yeah, some things do just happen. But you are watching it all so carefully that you'll be able to replicate those small things that do come down to a bit of luck. You'll know how to do it again, and that's what's fucking cool.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And as we learn more about our spirit, then with those decisions about doing things again will be, at least we've got some understanding of. If you've got a plan and everything's considered, then if something happens in a positive way, well, you can do that again.
Yeah.
If you're not kind of on top of all that information, then if something happens that is a positive outcome, well, how on earth do you repeat it again? You just don't know, do you?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm going to ask you for a refill on this one in a bit because that's so good. What's the next one?
So the next one is, so this is a bit of a departure from what we tried before. This is an extension of our sort of collaboration and partnership with Thornbridge Brewery. So they make an imperial stout called Necessary Evil.
Cool.
They barrel age their stout in actually a variety of barrels, so it will change from one of their stout releases to the next. But what we've done with this particular release, so it's called the Necessary Evil Finish, because it was finished in Necessary Evil Imperial Stout barrels.
Cool.
And the stout it's 13%. It's got a real strong personality, and we just thought if we're going to do something that's let's just call it a generic beer finish. Well, let's work with our close partners, Thornbridge, and let's choose a beer that's got some personality. The notion that a 5% IPA is going to have a bearing on 60% single malt spirit, it just doesn't ring true with me. Whereas 13% stout, yeah, that could make a difference.
Can stand up.
Yeah, so that's what this is. So this is originally ex-bourbon barrels, finished in these imperial stout casks for actually 7 to 8 months, and yeah, quite different. You can get some of that kind of almost like that yeasty, stouty sort of almost kind of like dark chocolate maltiness.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah,
that dark chocolate. Straight away on the nose, stands right out. It really is very, very different. And again, some really cool differentiators. This is 5-year-old whiskey at most, and you've put 4 different expressions in front of us. Like, okay, 1 and 3 have similarities.
Yeah.
Other than that, these are 4 different drams.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Very, very different drams.
Yeah.
And that's impressive, especially because they're all, well, I'm going to get a bit more stuck into this now, but they're all very well executed. To have 4 different expressions at less than 5 years old, and
them all
really
be consistently good, enjoyable, right? All of them.
really good. This one's weird. It's
Yeah.
funky. There's some weird stuff going. I can't put my finger on anything going on in this glass.
And look, I'll be totally honest. We just thought, look, we're making whiskey in Derbyshire. a lot of what we do is about provenance of place. And so if we're going to do a beer finish, well, we'll be working with a Derbyshire-based brewery, and our biggest friends are Thornbridge Brewery. And then the other decision is, well, let's pick one of their beers that's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And when we bottled this initially, we did the mini vatting. We were like, we really like this, but it's almost like that Marmite type thing. We acknowledge that this won't be everyone's cup of tea.
No, definitely not.
But the fact is, the flavour comes from Derbyshire, and that's kind of really resonated with a certain group of people who are following our story.
For sure.
So this release sold out last year, but we've got the next one coming out in July this year.
Okay.
And it kind of feels to us a little bit like we've bought almost like some beer drinkers into
the category.
Into the category, because
That's cool.
they're interested in stout.
Yeah.
They'll be, if they're interested in beer making at a reasonable level, they'll be interested in things like yeast and fermentation, and we can have all those discussions.
All of a sudden, they're gaining so much knowledge about that crossover.
Yeah,
for sure.
So this particular stout, when Thornbridge made it, that was matured in bourbon barrels. So what we got from Thornbridge was these stout conditioned bourbon barrels.
Cool. And how long do they age their stout?
So they age their stout for about 9 months.
Okay, so 9 months for them, 7-8 months for you.
Yeah,
Cool.
Very similar. And I don't know exactly, but I think they do 3 or 4 releases of this Necessary Evil Stout a year.
Cool.
And they'll use a variety of casks. So their most recent release, I think it's only just come out in the last week, was finished in our whiskey casks.
Sick.
So, and actually, not only our kind of generic whiskey cask, but the whiskey cask we used for our first release. So the latest
cool.
edition of their Imperial Stout, Necessary Evil, has been finished in our whiskey casks.
One hand washes the other. This is the thing I love about the sort of collaboration between different, industries here. And one thing that I was going to ask as soon as you started telling us about this dram, will it be sold with the beer at all?
Yeah, so we've what I've been careful to do. We haven't got a lot down here, but by the time we release this in, let's say, late July, or our next version, Necessary Evil, or Necessary Evil Finish, the stout that they bottled will be getting close to the end of being sold out, essentially.
Right.
So we've bought a load of that stout that we'll sell from the shop here.
Cool.
So if people come down, they want to try the Necessary Evil Finish, they can buy the stout from the barrel.
That's what I want.
I like that.
I want to be able to try this with the stout,
Yeah,
because that
absolutely.
is a fucking cool experience.
Yeah.
I would buy a 4-pack of stout and a bottle of this all day long, and that is something I would treasure sharing with people, because this is such a different whiskey.
Yeah.
And to be able to have that stout with it, that sort of slow sipper, a bit of a session drink, but then you've got your whiskey to really sort of...
I mean, slow's the right
I love
word,
that
it's a 13% stout.
I was going to say, it's not really
But I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I'm big. There's a brand called Harveston and Innocent Gun as well. We love. Massive fan of these sorts of brands that are utilizing casks from the whiskey industry or different sorts of casks. And sorry, just for everyone at home, what's this brewery called again?
Thornbridge Brewery.
Thornbridge Brewery, guys. So we'll try and get a link for that as well, maybe.
Yeah.
Might
Because
pop in
this
there
is
on the way
something-
home as well.
Sorry, say it again. To pop in on the way home. We fucking well might do, mate. I wasn't going to push you on it on the podcast, but yeah, we're definitely stopping off there. This is the thing. Yeah, I think, people definitely want to... it's not even wanting to understand. It's like once you understand what flavors you like and where they're coming from, you can utilize that information so much better along your whiskey journey or along your journey in general. Like you say, if you're bringing beer drinkers in, and it's, oh, this is cool. Oh, well, I've seen now a beer that's aged in a bourbon barrel or in a sherry cask, or I'll try that because I liked it. It's just, you get so much more involved in the whole experience. And that's what's cool about it. So, all right.
And the next release we've got of this Necessary Evil Finish, I mean, it's currently still sat out there in the casks, but that's another really interesting avenue, because the stout was originally aged in PX casks.
Yes.
So we've now got our whiskey sat in those stout conditioned PX casks.
That's a bit.
And
of
you
me,
can
that
just
is.
and you can just now, since the temperature started to pick up a little bit, we're starting to get a bit of that kind of PX DNA. I mean, it's not in your face. You've got to kind of search for it a little bit.
Right.
But it's kind of really interesting, and so it's it's going to be a necessary evil finish. The second that we've ever done.
Yeah.
But it's going to be
A little bit
somewhat
different
to that one.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
When you release that, you let me know, okay? Definitely. If this is this good, that PX, you know what? I think the PX will be better because just that level of viscosity.
Right. Yeah.
To go behind that IPA. And again, you've still got this wonderful light peat that is dancing throughout all of these drams. I think the first one was the only one where it didn't particularly stand out to me. It was kind of maybe coming through as something else, as like a little bit of spice or something. But every dram here has had this wonderful peaty smoke that's just so well balanced. And again, given that these are four such different expressions, it's incredible to see how well that it is suited throughout,
And also, from trying the new make earlier, it's very consistent, the spirit that comes through.
Right.
Yeah. Don't know if you get that. But some whiskies, you don't pick up that new make. That raw spirit that's been distilled.
Yeah.
And with you...
No, you get that
definitely
fruity character throughout all of the light smoke.
Really
comes
through.
You're absolutely right, Stevie. Definitely.
Yeah, and that's been an important focus for us. We love our new make, but by and large, what people are going to be tasting is the kind of the matured version of it. But it's thinking about cask selection and also our the kind of the just things like the strength that we cask at, where we're going to retain some of that distillery character, so it doesn't get kind of lost.
Yeah. No, I love it. Very, very cool.
Where are you excited to see your spirit go? Is there an age that you're looking forward to seeing it at?
Or a cask type?
Yeah.
Or what is it that you're most looking forward to in the future? That's a good question.
I think in the short term, so let's say 2 or 3 years, I'm really looking forward to the point where we put out a bourbon only maturation. Partly because I think that's almost like the most honest version,
most stripped back
of your distillery.
And it's also where the story began, right?
Yeah. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and who knows when that will be. We've got to kind of make a decision about when the right time is.
Well, like you say, make the decision when you want to make the fucking decision, right?
Yeah.
Whenever it tastes good enough to be released, that's when it'll be released. Cool.
But yeah, I think beyond that, we've got this kind of. I kind of use this phrase a lot, and it's actually not my phrase. I've kind of borrowed it from other people, but it's kind of like do one thing well. So let's make sure that everything we do is kind of is considered, and that the whiskey we're making today, or that we made in 2018, whatever it may be, we've just got the kind of the right focus, and innovation is, I think it's part of the kind of New World category, certainly part of the English category. But in my mind, I still have a sense, or a kind of, a caveat that let's not be innovating just for the sake of doing something different. It's got to make some sense.
It's got to be good.
Yeah, it's got to be good, and you don't always know if it's going to be good, and sometimes with hindsight things may not be good, but the stout finished necessary evil finish whiskey, we really didn't know whether it's going to be good or not, but it made sense to me because this is a Derbyshire provenance spirit, through and through.
For sure.
And so that makes sense. And if the whiskey doesn't quite turn out how we wanted, well, we still made those decisions, with a very key focus on who we are and where we're making this whiskey from.
I guess the beautiful thing is, Max, is you guys are so kind of early on in your journey. You can muck around. You can trial and error. You're not, as you say, like a series going 100 years, and you've got to put out something very consistent. This is the time now that you can experiment. And
And
have
also,
fun.
like you said earlier, Max, it's like if you don't do it now, when will you do it?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you want to mess around and do trials with young stock, when you've got 10-year-old stock, 15-year-old
Exactly.
stock, it's like that's when you probably want to be looking to put out a more sort of, consistent product or whatever. Now is the time to trial. Now is the time to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And the fact that you're putting all of this thought and just everything down to the fucking degree. I love it. It's just, it makes complete sense to me. One thing that you said though, Max, that stands out as interesting is you said you wanted to do one thing and do one thing well. Now, we've tried 4 very different sensational whiskies. I've actually really enjoyed every single one of them. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't expecting to, because it's a brand new English whiskey distillery, right? I think people do come in with this kind of, stupid assumption that they know what they're fucking talking about. I put my hand up. I'm one of those idiots who thought they knew what they were fucking talking about.
There's also a lot of distilleries popping up all over the UK doing
There's so many distilleries popping up. There's so many people that think they know what they're up to. And this is the thing. You think you know. I'm an idiot. I didn't know. I was wrong. These are all sensational. Not one of them was half decent. All 4 of them have been great. However, it's not just whiskey that you guys are making. So you don't just do one thing well. You've got a rum that we're going to try in a minute. I'll come on to your rum. But you're making some cool gin, which again, we talked about the brand, and we talked about the brand in the Whiskey Baron content. If you guys have seen it, great. But for those of you who haven't, Wireworks is obviously the whiskey brand, and it's been named after essentially the building that we're in, the heritage that came before you guys, the Wireworks that was here. Tell us a little bit about the gin, though, because for those who didn't watch the Whiskey Baron content, that is a really solid brand, again, that kind of praises pays homage to the area that you're in.
soaked in history and folklore, really, right?
Right? And again, it's another product that is really fucking good.
Yeah,
tell me. I don't know. Maybe you only do the whiskey really good. I don't know, Max. I think the gin is delicious as well. You tell me.
No, we do a range of London dry gins that we're really proud of, and I think, on the one hand, that kind of cuts against this kind of focus of doing one thing well, but on the other hand, when we started the distillery, literally when we broke ground here, which was in December 2016. You could look forward to the next 5 years and think, well, we're not going to be bottling any whiskey in that period. So, how are we going to bring people on board with what we're doing?
Yes.
Because that's in the modern world. With the one of the beauties of social media is it does allow you to get your brand voice out there, but also as a distillery, maybe we could offer some visitor experiences. So. Yeah, we do distillery tours. That's something we started doing in 2018. And our head distiller at the time knew how to make gin, and obviously the gin market was booming. And we just thought, well, look, we want people to come down here. We want to take them around the distillery, but we actually probably do need a spirit so they can at least taste an output of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to try the whiskey. So we thought, well, we'll make a gin. We're going to make a London dry gin, so we're not going to make a heavily flavoured gin that might there might be swings and arrows with the fashions. We'll just make a good, kind of honest,
Traditional gin.
Traditional, authentic dry gin.
Right.
And that's what we set out to do. And I think we were also we were kind of also honest with ourselves, and the gin market was booming. Lots of people were starting gin distilleries and had been doing, and so we never sort of approached the gin on the basis that this is going to be something that we're kind of exporting, far and wide or throughout the UK. Let's kind of focus on our backyard with the gin.
Yeah.
Let's focus on people that are coming down here and just get them interested in what we're doing down here as a distillery. And that's kind of very much been the focus. So, you'll find our gin outside of Derbyshire, but the vast majority is, within our backyard, where we've got that local relevance, that kind of local provenance, and where people who are coming to Derbyshire, live in Derbyshire, visitors, whatever, if they want to try something that's made locally, well, they can come and see how it's made here, and they can buy some from us.
For sure.
So it kind of it complemented the whiskey in the sense that we wanted to we wanted to grow this business to be known as a destination for whiskey and for craft distilling. And the gin at least enabled us to have a conversation around something you could try whilst we were waiting for the whiskey to come out. So that was kind of what was behind it. And then, the kind of the local angle. So we're really, with the whiskey, with the wireworks, very much celebrating where the whiskey's being made. And so the branding for the gin is taken from the woods that surround the distillery, and there's some interesting stories around those woods as well, but it's very much that same sense of place. So although it's a different spirit, and there was no sense in my mind that we would have a league of gin drinkers who would convert to being whiskey drinkers, but it was more about kind of building our profile as a location.
Definitely. And what I love about that, speaking with your wife Claire earlier, about the thought process that went into the branding, because again, we're very lucky. We get to visit all different sorts of the distilleries. We get to meet all different sorts of people. And one thing that kind of stumps me sometimes is you set up a whiskey distillery, not you, but somebody sets up a whiskey distillery. They start producing gin, but they sell it as the distillery name. And then they start selling whiskey 3, 5, 10 years later. And it's like, hold on, that's a gin, right?
Yeah.
And this is the thing, is like, what is the differentiator? The beautiful thing about both of your brands, as we've all already said, is like they both pay homage to your home. They are both very much a part of the furniture here, but they're two very different products.
Yeah.
And they give each other room to breathe. One doesn't encroach on the other. I've actually, people listening to it at home probably thinking, I've heard you before say, Jake, just whiskey distilleries who do gin or, this, that, and the other. And, I do. I'm not a big fan of it. I think if you're going to focus on whiskey, focus on whiskey.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is here, you are focused on whiskey and you feel that, The gin, you definitely get the sense that, yes, okay, it's a side project. It's good gin, but as you say, it's kind of a local focus. The whiskey is the global focus, is the big brand here, is ultimately what you're trying to draw people into, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, we didn't come from a brand or marketing world, but I think we understood, or it was our view at least, that because if we make gin, it's going to come out before the whiskey is available, and there's therefore this potential for people to think, well, this is the gin distillery now doing whiskey, which of course is the wrong way around. And actually, we took our lead a little bit from Bruichladdich.
Right.
So their gin's called the Botanist.
Yes.
I mean, it's a huge gin, very successful. I'm sure lots of people that drink the Botanist gin have got no idea it's made by Bruichladdich.
For sure,
Distillery.
yeah, definitely.
So we just thought, well, they've been really clever. That was our view. We think they've been really clever about sort of separating those brands.
Yeah.
And when we thought about that, that seemed to us to be the best way to go.
Definitely.
So that's what we decided to do.
But again, it is that fact that, both brands are intrinsically tied. Even if you don't recognize it from the outset, once you sort of do a little digging, whether it's talking to one of you guys, coming down here, having a little look online, you figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it gives you that much more. Certainly for me, for somebody who actually really appreciates branding, really appreciate time and effort. And that can be anything from the time and effort that's gone into designing a bottle, and your bottles are beautiful, or, the time and effort into actual branding and the stories and everything. It really matters to me, and that makes me buy into the brand that much more. So, I think you've done a sensational job there.
Thank you. For us, we did what felt natural. So it's always been authentic, really. That's the reality.
For sure.
These woods out here exist. They're called Shining Cliff. So we're going to kind of borrow that for our gin brand.
Yeah.
It so happens that there's a lovely little side story to Shining Cliff Woods, which doesn't really have any huge bearing on the liquid in the bottle, but it's allegedly the origin to the Rockabye Baby Lullaby, and we tell that story on our gin label.
Right. Okay.
So when people come here, they're not going to remember half a dozen tasting notes, but they may well remember that, that's where the Rockabye Baby Lullaby, comes from.
For
is
sure,
the woods
for
behind
sure,
the
for sure.
distillery. So we kind of celebrate that.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, so we've had 4 delicious Wireworks whiskies. We've discussed Shining Cliff Gin. And now we have got your rum. Now, we've only got one rum. We're going to give it a little try. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so the rum, again, kind of how does this tie in with our whiskey? Well, we were just curious about, how you would make a good rum, because we knew that things like yeast and fermentation and maturation were relevant in rum making. And those are the kind of things that we felt like we were starting to know a little bit about because we made whiskey. And so we thought, look, although there's an enormous growth and kind of prevalence of people making gin, you're not going to see that with rum, because A, it needs a lot more know-how in terms of how to make it, and B, you need different equipment. So we had, in large part, it wasn't kind of designed to make rum, but in large part, we had the kind of equipment that you need for making rum from scratch.
Right.
And again, in terms of making a spirit that we thought was kind of authentic, we thought, well, we could make a rum from scratch, and we'll go learn some stuff. And we made some terrible rum early on. And then we started to get in touch with small-scale independent rum distilleries around the world. So Panama, for example, on the west coast of the States. And we started to learn that this kind of 5, 6, 7 day fermentation, for example, that we think as being uber long in whiskey making, that's not even scratching the surface if you want to make kind of funky style rum.
For sure.
So we started dialing up our fermentation length, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We do a 2-week fermentation for our rum, and that's by no means the longest, but it works for us here in terms of our environment.
Significantly different, though, like you say, to the whiskey.
Significantly different.
It's a very different game.
Yeah, but really interesting for the distillers. For me, we didn't really think, oh yeah, we can make some, make a rum brand and make lots of money. We just thought, well, we can learn something here. Definitely. About creating spirits, and the kind of process of doing that was fascinating. And what we think we've created is a great rum. We don't add any sugar. It's not a spice rum. I mean, in my view, that's a different product. Yeah. The only sweetness in here comes about through the fermentation and distillation. I'm sure you'll know there's lots of rum brands out there, we don't need to mention any names, where although it's been made from a derivative of kind of sugarcane or sugarcane juice in the first place, they're adding sugar kind of post-distillation to ramp that up. And we don't do that because that just does not interest us. So we're making this rum. We found it a fascinating kind of process, and it's a product that we're really proud to put on the shelves here. But it gives us another angle as well with the whiskey, is that every time we do a rum bottling,
when all's said and done, you've got the rum cask.
We've got the rum cask.
Tidy.
And again, in terms of that kind of that local provenance, what does it mean to be producing a rum cask finished whiskey in Derbyshire? Well, it means a lot to us, and we made the rum in the first place.
Yeah, how many whiskey distilleries can say, oh, we've got this rum finished whiskey, oh, we made the rum as well?
Yeah.
I can't think of any. Do you know what I mean? Like, very, very few, even from a conglomerate level.
Yeah.
It's just not how they work. The passion isn't there. And so this is the thing, like you say, these sort of smaller founder-led brands like yours, it's where that passion shines through. It's where these possibilities come up.
Totally. So we're really proud of the rum as a standalone spirit. We've made it hopefully for people to appreciate neat, or that there's no reason why it wouldn't work really well in various cocktails. But yeah, it has this really nice tie-in in its kind of the afterlife of the cask for our whiskey.
Love it.
It is delicious.
Cool. You like that, yeah?
I really like it, yeah. And
I'm not much of a rum drinker, but
I used to be.
I enjoy
so
it.
I got into whiskey, and I haven't had rum for a while, but that is Yeah, it's delicious. It's very sweet. It's got a really nice toffee note.
Yeah,
Nice
there's a
sweet.
lot of kind of toffee and
A
vanilla.
lot of toffee, yeah.
More on the nose,
Yes.
weirdly, and then it kind of it catches up slowly on the palate.
I think it's yummy. It's quite chewy.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's some commonality there with our whiskey is that there's a very kind of deep mouthfeel,
Right.
kind of, the pleasant kind of oiliness.
Actually, you're right. And even with the first one, we were saying about it being a 46.8, 46, yeah. Like for us, not a thin whiskey, but a watered down whiskey in the grand scheme of things, right? But the depth of that, the fact that it did actually have quite a bit of backbone to it.
Yeah. With that first whiskey we tried, the Cadoro, that was a kind of a deliberate kind of convergence. Most of the releases we did last year were north of 50. But we just kind of felt, well, look, there's probably an audience that we're not reaching, because some people, I'm sure if they pick up a bottle of any spirit and it says 50+%,
Even 40%. Some people look at 40% and go, oh,
yeah.
that's the legal minimum, right?
Yeah.
God, I can't do that.
So for us, the 46.8 was, we had half an eye on thinking about, there's a broader range of people out here that we really want to kind of introduce to our whiskey.
Aye.
So let's think about something that tastes good at that ABV, but perhaps doesn't have that sense that it could be off-putting because it's 50 odd.
For sure, definitely. Thoroughly enjoyable.
Delicious. As you say, wasn't expecting it, and that is no means, any sort of,
No, it's
offence
prejudgment
to
on
you.
our behalf.
Well, it's
entirely.
not that, Jake. It's as you say, there's a lot of distilleries popping up. You guys
Yeah.
are.
But that's
very
it.
new.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It's
You know,
a
so
prejudgment.
you do
We
go-
assume that
you
we
do
think
go in
we
with a
know
bit of,
because
yeah.
we've seen what other people are doing,
Kind
what
of,
other
yeah,
places
of
are
course.
doing.
It is a naive
And so
mindset.
you do.
But it's nice to be surprised.
It's
Yeah.
fucking wonderful to be surprised.
We find it every week. There'll be someone comes in the shop who lives 10 miles away and only heard through a friend of a friend that we existed.
Right.
And you just think, holy crap, we're doing terrible on our social media. If people this close by don't know we're here, but that's the reality.
For
It's
sure.
a tough
Yeah.
game these days, though.
I mean, this is the thing. The reality of it is it's difficult to get your name out there. What I would say for everyone at home is if you've heard of any of these brands or White Peak Distillery as a whole, get your ass down here because it's a sensational experience. It really is. Not only just trying it, but like I say, going around, speaking with you, speaking with your team. And obviously, Max, don't get me wrong, as a founder myself, I know that the main passion is coming from yourself, from your wife. I get that. But it really is deeply instilled with each of your... Every single person we've spoken to here today has been excited about what they're doing, excited to share with us. It hasn't felt like they're being paid to show us around.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been on a few distillery tours where it's like, all right, mate, fucking hell, just finish up. You obviously don't want to be here, do you know what I mean? Just get to the end of it. Let's drink some whiskey and we'll leave you alone.
No. I mean,
You don't get that here at all. You
Yeah.
just get passion and they just want to ship more and more. What else can we show you? What else are you interested in, And I love that. It really is important to somebody like me.
Well, thank you. I think look, the rest on the behalf of the rest of the team, they'll be delighted to hear that, and we do get kind of praise for our distillery tours because that passion shines through. But we are open. At the end of the day, we want to celebrate this kind of craft of distilling, and and let's try and kind of unpack some of that black box where we can.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some conversations where you don't want to go into the detail because people are going to get bored to hell. But equally, we want to welcome perhaps whiskey enthusiasts to try our whiskey, but perhaps people who are new to whiskey to kind of dip their toe into the market. And yeah, I mean, I remember years ago, I used to get these bottles from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and I loved the whiskey, and I almost felt like I was not qualified to drink it because I did not kind of identify with the 15 adjectives on the back of the bottle.
Right.
And I think one of the great things that's happened in whiskey, and certainly I think world whiskey has made a big contribution to that, is just kind of welcoming people in a bit more with just I think the overall look and feel of the brand, how they talk about their whiskey.
The openness of the brands, right? Yeah. But again, be honest, it's not every brand. There are lots of new brands out there that are trying to stick to more traditional things. And so it is wonderful to see newer age brands that are welcoming people in. And you definitely get that feel, you know. It is a premium brand. It's definitely a whiskey. You get some whiskey bottles that look bizarre and it doesn't feel like it's definitely a whiskey, but it welcomes you in. It's kind of the whiskey of everyone at approach anyway, right? I feel so anyway. Anyway, so look, Max, we could probably sit here all afternoon and chat away, and I'm sure you've got many more drams that we'd love to try. But for everyone at home, we don't want to drag it on too long. So we're going to bring it to the tough point of the day. We're going to be ruthless, and we're going to give you our ratings on these drams. Don't worry too much. I think you can already tell from our responses that they're
Well, I'm
pretty
going to tell
positive.
you straight away, right?
Yeah, go on.
It's all bottles are a buy from me.
They're all buys.
And they
boom, boom,
and for
boom,
you
boom, boom,
too?
boom, boom. So I am verging between buy and don't buy on the second one.
Okay.
That's a very personal thing. You know me.
The virgin oak finish, yeah.
I'm not a massive fan of virgin oak. I struggle with it. It's probably one of the best virgin oak finishes or virgin oak sort of, whether it's a double maturation or whatever, that I've tried. It's very well balanced. How much? I'll tell you what. Let's start from the beginning.
Okay,
let's do it properly.
Okay.
Sorry, what's this called again? The
Codoro.
Codoro, sorry.
Yeah.
So Codoro is how much per
That's
bottle?
£60 a bottle.
£60 per bottle. I buy that all day long.
Yep.
No questions asked. Delicious. Sensational whiskey. Buy yourself a bottle now. And it's a buy from you.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's obviously a buy from you because you own the distillery. Second bottle is it called just the virgin oak finish? or-
Virgin oak finish, yeah.
Cool. How much is that per bottle?
That is £67 a bottle.
Okay. Stevie.
It's a buy for me. It's actually one of my favourites here.
One of your favourites?
It
okay,
is, yeah.
cool.
I
Fair
do
enough.
like virgin oak.
I'm verging
I
on
do
it.
like
I'm gonna give it a don't buy. I'm gonna be a little bit harsh. It's
No
not my
pressure
style.
here, mate.
It's not my style of whiskey. It's one of the better styles of a virgin oak that I've tried. But I'm gonna be ruthless. I'm gonna say don't buy on that one. The third one is my favourite of the day.
That's the pending alter ego.
Cannot wait for this to launch. Please let me know a day before so I can get my web browser up
5,000
and running.
bottles, you might be
ready.
all right.
I might
Yeah,
be able to
you
get
might
one,
be able to,
hopefully. What will this retail at?
That'll retail at 65.
Can I be honest with you, Max? I think you're underpricing that. I think that is a sensational bottle of whiskey.
Thank you.
I think if you compare that to what else is going on the market, that's an £80 bottle of whiskey. I think that is delicious.
Yeah, when you actually bring it to
I'm getting for
mentioning no names. but-
£65 a bottle. That's a fucking oosh from me, mate.
Oh,
I
wow.
buy that all day long. I buy 3. That's really good.
It
No?
is. Oh, of course. Yeah, no.
It's a buy?
As I've said, buy or
Buy,
yeah.
solid buy, solid buy. All right, cool. Fourth one was the
Necessary
IPA.
evil finish, yeah. So that was one of
The
the
initial
final
one.
bottles of last year's
Okay,
release.
so we can't buy this one anymore. No. What was that one retailed at?
Good question, actually. It was sold out so long ago that I can't remember. I think it was 65.
Okay. So they're all in a very similar region.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be releasing the PX version of this.
Yes.
Which I can only imagine is
That
going to be
sounds very
better.
exciting,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's going to be very good.
Yeah.
What will that retail at roughly?
Yeah, kind of price to be determined. But
Okay.
but our general approach with pricing is we think we're making good whiskey. It's for us it's in that premium kind of luxury category, but we want people to be able to to buy a bottle to drink and not to have it out of reach and out of touch.
Yep.
That's
and
that means
I love
different
that.
things to different people.
Yeah,
But
no,
that's
of
kind
course.
yeah.
But that's a wonderful intention to have as well, right? Most brands, again, they're thinking about money in the pocket at the end of the day, not let's make this priced to drink, Okay, so in the sort of maybe 65 to 85 pound range, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of. All right, cool. I'd buy that all day long, no doubt, especially the PX
Well, I'll
one.
put myself out there and say it won't be above 75.
Okay, I buy that then, especially the PX one. I think the PX one's going to be magic and may even challenge my favourite one of today. Well done, all right, fair play. And the rum. The rum's a 50 cents litre bottle then?
Yeah, it's a 50 cl bottle.
Slightly smaller bottle?
Yeah, 45% ABV.
Cool.
That's retails at £33.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I don't really buy rum, but for £33 you can't really go wrong, can
know.
you? I buy that, yeah. I mean,
It's
I don't drink
it's
rum.
underpriced, but
to have a rum in the cupboard and something to sip on, like you say, something to put in a cocktail. And again, kind of actually just going back to what you just said about the pricing and you're pricing it to drink. These whiskies would also go really well in cocktail. I don't know if that's, I appreciate they work very well as a single malt, so I wouldn't want to say you should try these in a cocktail because, it's maybe not why you've designed them, but at the same time, I'm somebody who's not too precious when it comes to making cocktails. And I've really enjoyed all of these whiskeys, so I would probably really enjoy making cocktails with them. And like you say, at the price that they're at, I wouldn't feel bad about it. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. And I think people should drink whiskey how they want to drink whiskey.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And I make old fashions with our whiskey, and that's for me. That's kind of my kind of go-to cocktail.
For sure.
And occasionally when it's hot, maybe a highball, but no,
It's all different types of enjoyment. That's the thing, though, Max. 100%.
Well, I think
that
that's the thing
virgin
about whiskey as well is that, to bring more people interested in the category, maybe there needs to be some suggestions about how you can enjoy it, and it doesn't always have to be neat.
Definitely. So, Stevie, sorry, £33 a bottle.
Yeah, I don't have any more rum in the cupboard, so yeah, absolutely.
So at the
fine.
moment, it's a buy.
Yeah, and look, people at home might think, we're just sitting here kissing your ass. It's not that at all. We are.
I think if you've
ruthless.
watched any other episodes,
We are
we can be a
ruthless.
little bit ruthless when we want to be.
I've bought into today so much because of you, the team, the heritage, the stories, the brand, and that's really what makes me buy into liquid's great. It's the story and the people for me as well.
Agreed.
So that's the big reason why I would buy into everything, because you guys are putting so much into it.
I think that says everything. Anyone at home that's watching this, whether you live near Derbyshire or not, it's worth the travel.
You come from Ayrshire,
I've driven 5.5 hours today. Worth the travel all day long. Sensational experience. Max, I appreciate, obviously, these are all your liquids. I'm not going to ask you a buy or a don't buy. What's your favourite one?
That's a hard question. It's
I
like
know.
asking what's your favourite child.
Yeah, that's why I asked it.
I think probably two would stand out. So the Oversmoke release, which you can't get anymore, but we're going to do that again. Actually, three will stand out. Our first release, because that was just such an amazing moment for the distillery.
Of course.
And then I'm really excited about the Alter Ego, because it just again this kind of the sense in which we're curious about how our kind of spirit behaves and how we kind of can tweak our whiskey making. That it's quite different to what we've done before. So
and it's another passion project, right?
Yeah.
So
Love it.
Cool.
Max, thank you so much for spending the time with us, sharing your wonderful spirits, sharing your story, your passion. Really appreciate it. I think you've got two converts here, if that wasn't obvious to begin with. Stevie, as always, such a pleasure co-hosting with you, sir.
yes, thank you, Max, and your team.
For everyone at home, thank you so much for joining us for this wonderful episode. As we say, get your ass down here to White Peak. And if you're a little bit too far, or if you're overseas, you can't get down here, keep an eye out. 3 incredible brands coming out of this distillery. Lots to look forward to. We'll see you soon. Sláinte mhath.